Welcome, guys. I'm here with Stan Cotten, Sportscaster of the Year. I believe this is your fifth time winning, correct? Fifth
That's
time
right.
winning
Yeah.
out of North Carolina, which is amazing in itself. But Stanton is an award-winning sportscaster and has been inducted into the Greater Knoxville Sports Hall of Fame. He's been broadcasting college sports for 40 years and is currently the voice of the Demon Deacons on the Wake Forest Sports Network. This is, like I said, his fifth time winning the NSMA Sportscaster of the Year award. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to have you. Thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This hopefully we can all get together this summer.
Yes, sir. Yeah, hopefully we can. Like you said, because you said that, I'm gonna start off with that question since you won before. So, as a multiple time winner, have you been to awards weekend? And if so, what are your thoughts on it, and how do you feel about awards weekend?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's an incredible weekend, even for folks who might not have won an award for that particular year. Started going to these when they were down in Salisbury at the old train depot, which is only about 25 minutes from my house. So that's one of the lucky things for those of us in North Carolina that we're headquartered now in Winston-Salem, of course, but prior to that in Salisbury. But it's just a great chance to meet people whom you may have never met before, both sports writers and sportscasters, and those who are interested in media, and certainly a chance to rekindle maybe friendships that you do have or have had in past years. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to do that, to be with like-minded people, to be with people who know what you go through, right, on a day-to-day basis. And quite honestly, I think Dave Gordon's done a really nice job over the last several years in getting young people there, maybe for the first time, maybe young men, young women who are maybe just wanting to get into the industry, or maybe have been in only a year, two, three, something like that, and think, hey, maybe I can learn something from those who came before me. So it's just a great weekend, and to be able to meet Hall of Fame members, people who have done their craft at a very high level on the national scene, to be able to mingle with them and exchange ideas and experiences, things like that. So I can't say enough about the awards weekend, and certainly anybody who may be watching this who's thinking about maybe coming, absolutely, if you can make it, I would encourage you to do so.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's just an amazing place to be because you said you're around like-minded people, and especially for like younger people like myself, uh, going to somewhere like that, being surrounded around people like yourself, accomplished people in the field, people you can learn from. But even just doing these like interviews like this, I was very keen on doing these interviews as well and excited because of what I can learn from interviewing you and just hearing about your experience. And I think it's very, very helpful for younger people who are thinking about getting into the industry or about to graduate, or even like you said, are in their first few years of college, high school, maybe even just being able to hear that, being
Mm.
reassured, and just being able to learn, I think is the biggest thing. So with that being said, what was your career path like on the way to your current position? Like I said before, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're in a very important role and an influential role that you can't get without being um, incredibly well versed and good at what you do. But I'm sure your trajectory wasn't completely linear. So can you tell us what your path was like to get to where you are now?
Well, first of all, I mean, well, not if, I'll never write a book, but the title of the book that I am never going to write would be All I Ever Wanted to Do Was Play. I mean, I was an athlete as a much younger person, and my goals were to play football as long as I could. My football career, because of injury, ended rather quickly and much sooner than I had hoped. And so broadcasting for me became a way to stay close to sports, stay close to football, stay close to basketball, be a part of those games that I wanted to be a part of for a long, long time, but couldn't. And so it was not something that, a lot of broadcasters dream about doing it from an early age. That wasn't me. I mean, I remember listening to games growing up in East Tennessee, listening to football and basketball games, particularly football, to the voice of the Vols, John Ward, who I think won 28, 29 times, something like that, from the state of Tennessee. But he was so good at his craft. He made me want to play. I wanted to be someone at the University of Tennessee that John Ward was describing, playing whatever. I didn't care. I just wanted to play at Tennessee. I was a quarterback in high school and a safety, but I would have played tackle. I didn't care. I just wanted to play. I loved football that much. And I remember just listening to those games over the years and listening to him make them come alive to me. And then when I couldn't play anymore and got into broadcasting, all of a sudden I had all those years of listening to somebody like John Ward. And I thought, wow, there's somebody I can maybe pattern myself after. And so I've tried to do that. He's the best I've ever heard. So why not try to emulate someone like that? And my high school football coach at the time is the one who kind of nudged me toward broadcasting and towards radio and television. And once I got to college at the University of Tennessee, he became a college coach at a Division II school, Carson-Newman University, and I was involved in media at the time at a radio station in Knoxville, and he knew that I had caught kind of the broadcasting bug at that point. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come to Carson-Newman and broadcast our games?" So I started calling games. And once I did my first game as a play-by-play announcer, that was it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do the rest of my life. That was 41 years ago.
Yeah.
I called those games at Carson-Newman for a number of years and got an opportunity to go to Marshall University for 4 years, for the best years of my life. And now I'm finishing year 25 at Wake Forest. And it's been the joy of my professional career to be involved with Wake Forest and the ACC and now Learfield IMG College. I just can't say enough about the opportunities over the years that I've gotten. But again, it's not something that, my kind of fallback was maybe medical school and becoming a physician. But once I got into broadcasting, no, that's it. Right. Career goals changed. And a couple of guys I roomed with in college at Tennessee are doctors today. And I think maybe they sometimes wish that they were broadcasters and maybe I sometimes wish I were a doctor.
Right.
But no, in all seriousness, I've had a wonderful career. I hope I've got a lot of years to go. That's the plan anyway. We'll see. You never know what's around the corner. But again, I think younger folks can look at what happened to me and say, you know what? Sometimes you don't get what you plan, and there are all kinds of things in broadcasting and sports media that, maybe you want to do a certain thing and it ends up you do something else. There are all kinds of opportunities. Don't pigeonhole yourself. So I think all of us could probably take lessons from one another in looking at one's career path and, well, how'd you get here? How'd you get there? And but as you said, certainly not linear. Most of us don't have those linear paths to where we are. And certainly that was not the case with me.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you would have been a great doctor if you chose to be one. Anyway,
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
But like you said, it's, I think that's important to hear because especially as someone who's younger and might possibly pursue a career in the sports media field, or in any field for anyone around my age, younger, older, like you said, you might not always know what you want to do, and you might need to pivot, right? You might, like you said, you pivoted, and that's all right to do. I think a lot of people my age at least, and I've experienced it too, just feel like you need to have everything figured out, and that's just not always the case. And that's really reassuring to hear from you because sometimes you might have to pivot, or you might find something that you're maybe more interested in, or that's quote unquote your calling, if you believe in those things. So
and I think Honestly, too, I think that that's more the case now, certainly than it was when I was coming through. I mean, when I was coming through, there was no internet when I started. There was no cable television. All those things that have developed over the years have created many, many more opportunities in our field, and so it's an exciting time, I think. Now, obviously, this year of the pandemic, sadly, people have lost their jobs. People have had to go on furlough. I did that last summer. And so talking about having to pivot, a lot of folks are having to look at things a completely different way. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to some normalcy. But without question, for younger folks, people coming through now, and maybe those of us who've been in the business a long time who maybe last year lost their job, there are different ways to skin the cat, if you will, and much more opportunities now than there were 10, 20, 30 years ago, without question.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And like you said, because when I was explaining kind of as a young person, but you're right. Like it could be at any age, but that's really reassuring to hear. And it's true, especially with the pandemic. Who knows where you might have to pivot to, what you may have to do. But again, thank you for that. So, second question I have: in your current role, what's your favorite part of your job right now?
Oh, it's got to be game day. I mean, for me, all the work happens in the days leading up to a football broadcast or a basketball broadcast. I mean, in my view, your preparation for those games has to be done ahead of time. I mean, if you're still scrambling around on game day, writing down notes, things like that, not that you can't do some late additions, but you're a little late to the dance. And if you are prepared properly, then those games can be all that you hoped and dreamed that they would be. And for me, I just can't tell you how much. I mean, it feels like I'm really almost playing the game. Obviously, we're not, but I still get butterflies. But prior to a broadcast, just like I remember way back as a kid getting butterflies before a ball game, and those are good to have. I think you do your best when your senses are heightened a little bit. But game day, without question, those whatever it is in a football broadcast, roughly 4 or 5 hours, basketball broadcast about 2/3 of that, whatever. Just absolute fun ride, win or lose. I mean, obviously, I want Wake Forest to win, but I guess yes. I mean, I'd be crazy to say it isn't a little bit more fun when Wake wins the games, but I just enjoy the process of trying to describe those games to those folks who, I mean, just live and die Wake Forest. I mean, that most of them graduates, or most of them people living around here that have adopted Wake Forest, and they hang on every word because they want the Deacons to win. And so, our job is to help paint that picture for them, because they can't be there. And when they let us into their living rooms, or they let us into their automobiles, or wherever they are and wherever they're listening, if we can bring that game to them and actually make them feel like, you know what, I didn't have a ticket, but I was at that game, then we've done our job. And I don't think we can do that unless we're properly prepared. But if we are, strap on, have a great time, and ride the emotion, ride the wave of the game. And so again, once the red light goes on a game broadcast, that it doesn't get any better than that.
Right. And you talk about how, like, I could like hear as you talk about that, like you realize like the influence you can have, because when you were, like you said, when you were coming up and you were younger, and you just wanted to play for some of these guys and hear them mention your name. And do you ever think, like, when you're calling a game or when you're preparing, like you have that same influence on a lot of younger people? You could have that same influence that some of those great sportscasters had on you coming up. And does that ever creep in your mind? Do you think about that a lot?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we'd be naive to not experience that, to not really think that. I don't ever recall thinking about it as I was broadcasting a game. But when you have people send you an email, when you have people maybe on a coach's show talk to you about, hey, I've listened to you for 20 years growing up as a kid or whatever, when they meet you in person, maybe at an event, then it really hits you that, I've been where they are now. I used to be the young one hanging on John Ward's every word when he was describing a Tennessee game. And it's, that's an awesome responsibility when you think of it. When you're the voice of a team, that fan base really relies on you. And so they expect you to be prepared. They expect you to be descriptive. They expect you to do all those things that you should as a professional do. And then if you do that, then even if you don't, I guess you're going to have an influence on the folks that listen to you, but you want to be a positive influence. You want them to like what they hear, because you want them to listen game after game after game and season after season. So, but it is a responsibility, and it's always kind of neat to speak to someone who says, man, I started listening to you when I was 10, and now that person is whatever, 20, 25, 30. It makes you feel old sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's okay. But it's an awesome responsibility, one I think all of us who do this for a living take seriously. Maybe not think about it while the games are going on, but it's fun to meet those people and hear how influenced they were and affected they were by what you do.
Right. And that is so true though. And like, because personally, I grew up a huge Yankees fan. Of course, I'm still a Yankees fan, but so like I grew up on the voices of like Michael Kay, David Cohn, and guys like that. Now that I'm a big Nets fan, I watch every Nets game. I grew up on the voice of those broadcasters like Ian Eagle, Sarah Kustok. So it's such a big thing, and it could really, influence like having those people to, kind of explain the game to you in a sense when you're young and you're growing up, and it really shapes, like, I think it pushes a lot of people towards honestly being in the sports industry, like yourself, because having those people is just such a great thing in this world. And I'm sure you are that person to so many like Wake Forest fans and people along your career you were able to touch. And I don't hear it talked about enough, but it really is such a real thing. So what do you think, and this may be hard because you've had such a long accomplished career, but what was the highlight? What would you consider the highlight of your career thus far?
Oh, wow. I there's no way I can point to one thing. I think, with me, once you start a job, you don't know how long you're going to be able to do it. You don't know what's coming around the next turn. And so to have done it for 41 seasons now, to me, is a blessing. I've had a wonderful career. And again, as I said earlier, I hope I have a number of years to go. I still love to do it. I still get excited to do it. Still get those butterflies I've talked about before every kickoff or tip off or first pitch, whatever the case may be. So just the fact that I found something that I enjoyed so much that I just continue to love it, even after 4+ decades of doing it. It doesn't seem old to me. Every game is different. That's what's so neat about, I think, what we do. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. So many times I sit down to get ready for a Wake football or basketball or baseball game, and it's kind of like, okay, what are we going to see today? What player is going to have some crazy game or make some crazy shot or return a punt 85 yards and going through all? You just don't know what you're going to see. Am I going to see a perfect game today? And each game holds so much potential. And again, that keeps it fresh. That makes it new every time the red light goes on and we go on the air. So. I can't point to one thing, but just the overall longevity of my particular experience has been a great blessing and something that I cherish and hope that it keeps going. We shall see. Again, you don't know what's going to happen, and but I'm going to try to do everything that I can do to make my career keep going for a long, long time.
Right, and that is true. You could see anything new any day. Like I feel like sports is always you see something new every game you watch, like something you feel like you've never seen before. And I'm sure being a part of and covering so many games over the years and sporting events, I'm sure that that moment has happened over and over and over again. So, yeah. And then what is the best piece of advice you can give, like someone younger like me who is thinking about getting into the sports industry? What is something you can tell them, a piece of advice, maybe a guideline to follow, something that you can give to those people?
I think probably the big thing is keep an open mind, keep your antenna up, because again, there's so many opportunities now in sports media that, again, you might think, well, this is what I want to do with my career, and you're maybe 23, 24, and you get started there, and you come to realize that maybe that's not quite it, but I can maybe pivot, take a little turn, and move over here and do this. You might think you want to be on camera, on mic, whatever, and maybe your talents are more suited for being in some kind of support role, maybe in television as a director, producer, all the other possibilities there, and the same with radio. So uh, all kinds of writing opportunities now with the internet and podcasts now. They're every city in the country with talk radio. It's just the opportunities are just endless now compared to what they were not that long ago. So for folks just kind of getting in, keep an open mind. Kind of survey the field, act like a punt returner. You got to see the whole field. You got to see where all the blocks are set up downfield so
Catch
you
the
can
ball
get
first.
to.
But
Yeah, so that would be my advice, and learn from those of us who've gone before us. Seek us out. I think most who've been doing these for a long time, if they get emails or phone calls, whatever, about, hey, would you listen to a tape? Can you give me some advice? I think most of us are perfectly willing and anxious to do that. I know I am personally. People help me coming up, and I think we can kind of pay it forward, if you will. So ask questions. Don't be bashful. There's so many of us out there who've gone before, that, turn over those rocks and you'll get some yeses. You may get some no's. I hope not, but you're going to get a lot of yeses, and you're going to have a lot of people who are willing to help you along your path, along your way. So again, open mind, eyes up, survey the field, and see what happens.
right. And that is great to hear as well. Just having some sort of like guidance point, because like you need help to get almost anywhere, right? You need a helping hand here and there, and just being able to, like this interview in itself, like your words, they can carry a lot of weight, and they can be that to someone. That's why I think it's so important to be able to seek out people like yourself and reach out for those opportunities. Like you said, you may hear a no, unfortunately, maybe here or there, but for the most part, you'll hear, yeses, and you just got to take that step forward and be willing to learn and able to learn. And I think that is super important, like you said. Just one last question before we wrap up. So just because I'm curious, how has your preparation been, and how is, your job kind of changed since, the pandemic started? What kind of changes have there been? Or if there have been any changes in your routine and your setup and stuff like that, how has the pandemic changed your role and your job?
Oh, quite a bit. I mean, we will likely get through the entire basketball season having never been inside an arena. That includes home games. For a lot of reasons at Wake Forest, we've chosen to do those remotely as well as the games away from Winston-Salem. And so we've got completely different preparation in terms of, especially technically. I mean, we've got for the games that ESPN, and that's most of them, produces, we get a video feed from Bristol. That's number one. We have cable backup. That's number two. And then we have video streaming. That's number three, because if you can't see the game, you can't describe it. And
Right.
so we try to have as much there in case something goes wrong with one of them. We have the other two as backups, and we have live stats that we take a look at. We also have worked with our partners at Learfield IMG College For instance, I'll pick North Carolina just because as you and I record this, we broadcast the Wake North Carolina game last night, and our partners at Learfield IMG College at North Carolina set up a crowd microphone, and we've got that audio from inside the arena as well. So we're looking at the video stream. We've got the audio sound. You can hear the horn and sneakers squeaking and officials' whistles, coaches barking out instructions, those types of things, to make it almost like we really are inside the building, even though we're not. And so as a discipline of calling the game, we're now looking at not what we want to look at. We're looking at something that's being fed to us, right? And so, if we're inside the building, we can look into the stands, we can look at a certain bench. That's not the case when you're calling a game. You are locked into the pictures you get, and that's what you've got. And so just the dynamic of calling a football game or calling a basketball game has changed dramatically in the pandemic when we have to do them remotely. We did, I think, a couple of football games that way, 2 or 3, but drastically different. And so, I don't think the preparation, other than technically, was all that much affected by the pandemic. Now, the pregame shows and the postgame shows certainly were, because we did all of our interviews like you and I are doing right now on Zoom.
Right.
Even though it's a radio broadcast, we would, record it and just use the audio. We do all of our coaches' shows via Zoom. So, Zoom wasn't, I don't think, meant for broadcasting, but we kind of hijacked it. And thankfully, Zoom has been available. It's been a wonderful tool for us to use. But, and I think I'm speaking for radio crews now, each of us probably attack it a little bit differently. But there are a lot of similarities as well. And I think we really have kind of come together as partners, in a sense, helping one another out. I mean, there's always been a really good give and take between radio crews over the years of helping one another out, especially technically, but even more so now, because when they come to our place and if they're doing it remotely, they'll need our help to give them certain things. So that's been the biggest difference, has been the technological challenges. And we all talked about it. We got together. I mean, a massive text chain was started in the summer about, hey, how are we going to do this? How are you guys going to do it? How can you help us? Here's how we can help you. And that's continued all through football and all through basketball, and certainly will until we get to the awards weekend in June, probably. And hopefully we won't have to do this anymore. Hopefully this is a one and done year for that. But it's been a season where we've learned an awful lot. We've been stretched. We've found out that we can do what we do differently. We've had to have open minds ourselves, and you can't get discouraged. And schedules change every few days with teams having to pause activities, all those kinds of things. So you got to pivot in a hurry and be ready to adapt. And just like the players and fans and everybody else, us broadcasters, or we broadcasters, have had to adapt as well. And so it'll be a year that none of us will soon forget. I think we're going to be better broadcasters on the backside of it. I hope so. I think I'm going to be, and I think probably everyone would agree with that.
Yeah, and I was curious about that. I was going to ask you, and I wasn't sure if you guys were doing those games remote or in stadium, because I know from the games I've watched, it's a mix of both. Some are at home and then some are in person. But that is very interesting. That must have been a really kind of a daunting change when you've been doing it one way for so long. And when you're doing it at home, and it sounded like there was just a lot of moving parts that you had to keep in check. Whereas when you're there in person, everything is right in front of you. But that is very interesting to hear, because when you're hearing it, because I think, the production teams have done such a great job of, as a viewer, you don't notice the difference. And the sportscasters have done such a great job adjusting that you won't even notice the difference. And you wouldn't know that these people are literally at their house and not literally in the booth or in terms of like a basketball game right next to the hardwood. And
that's been the goal. I mean, and we weren't afraid necessarily to tell people we were not live on location. We've done all of our remote broadcasts from our football radio booth, not from our homes. And a lot of television guys have been doing them from their houses. We haven't done that. We've been in a broadcast booth just across the street from the basketball arena in basketball season for the home games. But it's been crazy. But the goal was that on the other side, the listener really didn't know there was a big change going on. And I think by and large, most of us have been able to achieve that. At least I hope we have.
Yeah. As a viewer, I think nationwide, everyone's done a great job adjusting. And I feel as if not a beat has been missed. And it's large part because of the production team, sportscasters, everyone. I think like you mentioned earlier about the blockchain, that text chain, the group chat. I think it's moments like those and that allow like everyone working together and like sitting down and being like, all right, let's figure this out. How are we going to do this? How are we going to help each other? And I think that's what's been needed in a time like this. And I think everyone's been doing a great job, or as good of a job as they can. Like I said, some people like yourself have been doing it one way for so long, it's hard to adjust almost. But yeah, and those are all the questions I have. I just want to thank you again and congratulate you again for your 5th Sportscaster of the Year award. And thank you for joining us. If you have any other things you want to say to anyone listening, you can go ahead and do that now, but I just want to say thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, with regard to the award, at least I look at it this way. I mean, I'd be a fool to think that I get out there and I do a broadcast and I don't have any help and I don't have partners. We've got great teams at Wake Forest with regard to, technical support and other outstanding broadcasters. And I've got a spotter, Josh Nixon, who's been with me for about 20 years. And most of what comes out my mouth came in my ear from him.
Right.
And so these awards, even though our names are going to go on them, I think most of us, if not all of us, would certainly want to give a tip of the cap to all the people it takes to put on a really good broadcast. And certainly I want to do that and say thanks to my partners, my analysts, Tim Sparks, our engineer, and others, Larry Sorensen, Mark Freidinger, Bijan Todd, all the folks at Learfield IMG College. I mean, it is a team effort. And so I think all of us accept these awards on behalf of the folks who are there with us every single broadcast.
Yeah, that is very true. But thank you again. And shout out to all of those people like you mentioned as well. And bye everybody.